Good morning and welcome to Mouse River Players Community Theater. I'm coming to you live again from the work call for the Orphan Train. Last weekend we had some technical difficulties where I didn't have any sound, so hopefully it's working this time and we can get a little bit of conversation going again about what it takes to put on a show like the Orphan Train. So we're starting out here in the lobby. Just to give you some information about the Orphan Train, it is a historical drama that's set in the early 1900s. It's based on the actual events of the Orphan Train that transported kids from New York to the Midwest and dropped off different people, different children who were picked up along the way to get them into nicer homes. There was a bad epidemic of orphans in New York and a lot of overcrowding going on. So that's why we are doing this show. We actually did it 11 years ago, so it's kind of fun to come back to it and visit it again. As you can see in our lobby already, we have some historical information about the Orphan Train. And here is, shaking like crazy again. Here's our pictures from the last time we did it 11 years ago. You might see some recognizable faces in there. And we're very pleased that several of the cast members from this production back in 2007 have joined the cast again this year. So that makes it kind of special, being able to bring these people back. A couple of the people who played children in the show are back, playing some of the adult roles, which is pretty fun. All right, so I have with me right now the poster designer, Courtney, and she's going to tell us a little bit about our poster for the Orphan Train, and we'll get turned around so we can take a closer look at that here in just a minute. So Courtney, is there anything that we should know right away about the poster design?
Well, the most important information about the show is that it is coming up. It is The Orphan Train by Aurand Harris, and it's coming up March 9th through 11th and 16th through the 18th. Those are Friday, Saturday, Sunday performances, both weekends. Performances at 7:30 on Fridays and Saturdays, and 2 o'clock on Sundays for matinee.
All right, let's turn around and take a look at this poster. It's pretty nice. All right, can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration that you had for this poster?
So the poster this year was inspired by the poster that we had for the show 11 years ago, 2007, where we had our three of our newsies at that time. They went down to the train station. This is the train depot in Minot, and took a photo reminiscent of the time. So we went ahead and did that same kind of inspiration. We've got kids from our new cast who are part of our Newsies group, and we took them down there in the bitter cold that it was that particular Saturday, a couple Saturdays ago, and got them posed in there. The inspiration for the layout is based on newspapers at the time. I think actually the one image in particular that I pulled from was from The World, which was a newspaper in New York. We also have, we can see some things in here like the Railroad Museum and the Elks, their sponsorship. That kind of layout was sort of based on an advertisement that was in one of those newspapers. Also, and for those who are interested in going and taking a look and learning a little bit more about the railroad, and specifically the railroad coming through Minot, the Railroad Museum of Minot is going to be open for 1 hour before each performance, so people can come down and learn a little bit more about the area.
All right, so that's kind of what we've got going on with our poster. And the train depot isn't the modern train depot that we have in town right now. That's correct, right?
No, this is the old depot that's actually part of the museum at this point, down on Main Street, across from 10 North Main.
All right, so it's the one located in downtown Minot. You're not going to be taking a train from there anytime soon, but it's definitely a beautiful place and a great historical landmark. Now, Courtney is also in the show.
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about the part that you're playing?
So I am playing a woman who is an activist, and she is very against the Orphan Train. She believes that the Orphan Trains are just bringing the scum of New York to further into the country, ruining the small towns in the area and spreading disease. So the particular scene that I'm on is evidence of that type of thing that was going on. There were some children who were not of the best upbringing and had learned some things, ways to be able to keep themselves going while they were living out on the streets, and that was really frowned upon in the areas that they came to. So Lucky is the kid that's in our scene, and he learns that even though, well, he may not learn, but we learn that even though he thinks he's lucky, he's maybe a little less lucky than he is.
All right. Anything else that you'd like to add about the production or the poster design, program design, anything like that?
It's going to be a really big show. We've got a nice big cast full of kids. It is a drama, but there are some lighthearted moments in it. But it's a really interesting historical look at this event in history.
All right, thank you so much for your time. We're going to move into the theater, and while we go, just to talk a little bit more about the show is divided into 8 scenes, and each scene follows the story of a particular orphan or pair of orphans, and their journey on the orphan train and what happened in their lives. So some of them are really positive, maybe a little funny. Some of them are definitely sad, and definitely more dramatic. It is a drama, and so that's something to be very aware of, but it's very well done and wonderful piece of history. So we've made it up onto the stage, and many of you are probably very familiar with our stage and our auditorium. As you can see, this is a view from our stage, and we've got many people working to make sure that this show is able to happen. We could not do this show without volunteers and without the people who are dedicated to coming in and standing on ladders and painting or holding sticks so we can get some straight lines. Any number of things is necessary to make a production like this happen. I'm going to come over and talk with our set designer here in just a moment, but he is currently working with one of our volunteers and actors to draw some straight lines on our train depot door. So we'll give him a chance to do that before we go in and talk to him a little bit more. Kind of a fun thing that's happened for us while we're waiting for him to be available is we have actually gotten a new sound system, and so one of our regular volunteers is here and he is working on our sound system so we have the best experience possible for everybody in the cast and crew. It's been funded by donations from our patrons and people who just have decided to support us. And we couldn't do it without our patrons. We couldn't do it without the people who are willing to put some money into this community theater to make sure that we maintain a high level. See, our sound works. That was super fun. Whew. Okay, so the sound system is working, and probably working better than it's ever worked before. I don't think we've ever had that kind of clarity of sound in the past. I'm going to stop up here and see if our set designer is going to be available soon. Yeah, well, we can also find someplace a little bit quieter too. All right, so I'm here with Tim, and he is our set designer for the Orphan Train. Can you tell us, we'll let him answer the question.
Yep.
Perfect. Can you tell us a little bit about the set design for the Orphan Train?
Well, the set design is more of an open stage than what we're used to with a box stage for the other shows that we've done where we've been interiors and stuff. So this is an exterior. We're at a train station, and that's what we're creating here through the illusion of paint. And we're so it's going to be open, and then all the vignettes are going to take place in front of it. And there's some scenes that are inside and some scenes that are outside, but the setting is, the train station is more of a setting, a backdrop, something to help emphasize the fact that these orphans were brought into the area by train. And it was a very important place because this is where the trains pulled in, the orphans got off, they were adopted on the spot. The papers were signed, and off they went with their new family or people who were going to be using them for whatever it was, whether it was child labor or working on farms or being part of their family.
All right. You said that it's a vignette show.
Right.
since there's so many different settings, how do you make it so that you know when you're inside versus outside, or you've changed location?
Well, we bring on different prop pieces and set pieces. We have tables, dining tables and chairs to represent interiors. If it's an outside venue, we just use what's on the stage, and we don't add anything additional to it, so it kind of stays in that open form. It's also in the wording of the script and how it's implied by the actors come across as to whether we're working inside or outside and stuff like that. If we pan back a little bit, we can kind of get a bigger view of what's going on up here on the stage with the whole set. You can see we have our train station going up. This is the back. What we're building there is the doors. We're going to be painting those on. We've got windows that have been painted, so we have getting there, and it's coming along pretty quickly.
Okay.
With lots of help, lots of people dedicated to painting. This is not a heavy construction set, so it does that. Cole, we're going to be working on the bottom. I need a 5-inch rise off the bottom level and do the same thing with that.
All right, and let's walk over here just for a minute. So look at these bricks. Now, did you have like bricks already done, or did you buy something? How did you make this brick action happen?
It's kind of fun, but we painted the whole flats gray to begin with. That's our grout lines, and then once we have the gray on there, then we stamped the bricks on using sponges and red paint, kind of a brickish color of red paint, and we stamped them on and trying to keep them even and spaced and stuff like that, so they would look like bricks. And what we've been doing today is because we're at a train station and it's in the early 20th century, we still had steam-powered locomotives, so they used coal. So you had a lot of coal soot. You had a lot of dirt from the winds blowing and the dirt and stuff like that. So what we've been doing is we've been adding that texture layer to the brick so that it looks dirty. It has that feel that it's being exposed to the smoke from the dirt of the trains and the area that we're in.
All right, and it's a pretty wide open set, but I see we have piles and piles of suitcases and maybe some milk pails and different things. What is the purpose of all of these items?
Well, these are things that would have been brought in by the train, whether it was luggage for people or it was crates or containers, things like that would have been used to. Trains transported everything at the time over great distances. So they would have come in and they would have been stacked around the different locations on the set. And it helps with the ambiance. It helps give the feel of the train station. And that's mostly what it's there for, to add that color and that texture and layers of different things to give people that feeling that we have arrived at a train station, whether it's Grand Forks or Minot or Church's Ferry. Some of the stops that we use.
All right. And you're also an actor in the show.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about the part that you play?
Well, I am the conductor. So my job is helping to transport people from one station to the next. So as we move from scene to scene in the show, I will make sure that the orphans are back on board their train, that they're going to be traveling to the next location. I will change the sign on the next location so that we can tell where we're at. So when we move from Grand Forks to Minot and so on, we know where we're heading. And then I also play as a conductor, but I'm also here to help the orphans as well and trying to get them moved on to their new locations. And so I have a scene where I come in and I kind of have to defend the orphans, because when they came out here, they were considered the scourge. They were a burden added to the area by some people, and some people thought that New York and Boston and those areas out east were pushing their unwanted vagabonds to this area, and introducing levels of crime and mischief and things like that they didn't have. So,
And this role is a role that you're reprising. You played the same role
right.
11 years ago.
I did.
And how does it feel? How is it different to be doing the role now instead of how it was back in 2007?
Well, it's fun. It's nostalgic. So it's not really a whole lot different. I feel kind of the same. It was amazing to me how quickly I rolled back into the role and was able to feel the same emotions that I did before. So that was fun.
All right. Anything else that you'd like to add about the set or about the Orphan Train?
No, we're just excited to put this on. It's going to be a great time. We had great audiences the last time we showed it 11 years ago. It will be just as good a show, and just full of excitement and energy, and I highly recommend it. It's a great story. It tells a story that is much needed about the area, and it's a lot of fun, and it's geared for all ages, so everybody can come and see it.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you for your
You're
time,
welcome.
and I'll let you get back to work.
Thank you.
I'm going to head out into the audience because I can see another one of our actors out here, and she was not involved in the production 11 years ago. But let's see what she thinks about being involved in the Orphan Train. This is Molly. Hi, Molly.
Hi.
So we're live on Facebook. So Molly, can you tell us a little bit about the role that you're playing?
Okay, so my orphan, she is very sassy. She's been on the street her whole life, and she's just so desperate to be loved, and she's got like this spunky character where she's like, she how do I explain this? She is very inappropriate sometimes, but sometimes she'll catch herself. She'll be like, oh no, because she wants to obviously stay with this family who took her in, and she's just like very like attitude filled, and I love it so much.
She's kind of a larger than life character,
Yeah.
but she desperately wants to fit in, right?
Yeah.
She wants her family to love her. This new family that she's been brought into, and there's something very special about your scene because you're actually in it with your sister.
Yeah.
And so that's always fun, being able to act with your sister. And how do you feel? Like, how does that make you feel that you get that opportunity?
It's pretty cool because a lot of people who act, like a lot of they don't act with this, like maybe sometimes their siblings don't act, but it's so cool that we both get to like share this quality time on stage together, and get to act. I mean, it kind of comes from the heart too, because we sibling rivalry.
Right. And you've already got that relationship there.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier when you're working with somebody that you know and you trust already to be able to have a convincing performance. So that's always a good time. Anything else that you'd like to add about the Orphan Train or your experiences?
No, I don't.
All right.
I'm just so excited for this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And actually, our director has just shown up too, so I'm going to sit down with her and talk to her a little bit about this. So we're live on Facebook.
Okay.
And this is Holly, and Holly directed the show 11 years ago as well
Okay.
as this time. So what is it like to be able to bring this show back to the community?
Well, first of all, it's an important story. Something that involves Minot as well as the points all along the Great Northern. We're a railroad town, so I think it's important for people to know, how that all went together. And I think we've just been waiting to redo it because it was so popular the last time, because of the historical background. And what's fun is people will say, my great-grandfather or my grandmother rode the Orphan Train. So we have a lot of family connections. We've already had a couple of those, stories come out, and we haven't, gotten close to, showtime yet. So, I just think it's important. And of course, what's really special about it is our orphans, of course, 11 years ago, have now grown up, and so 3 of them are going to join us as adults, along with a lot of the adults that were in the show last time. And it made enough of an impact on the adults in the show to want to reprise you know, some of the roles. They're not maybe playing the same role, and some of them are, but, you know, just depends.
Yep.
And of course, we have a new crop of orphans, and we have a lot more this time. We have about double the size of the cast that we did originally. So that makes Paula and I try and be a little more creative.
Yes.
You know, but also we can, you know, kind of make it more real, because the more orphans you have, the more the situation looks dire when you see how many kids are, you know, left without homes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is it's an important story because the Orphan Train did come through this area.
Yes.
And we've gotten permission, right, to change the stops along the Orphan Train in the show to fit our area.
Well, right. You know, the script itself had it going through Iowa and down, which it did. Okay, but it also came through our area. And there was a man by the name of Bill Kelly. I was just putting his obituary on a poster, and that one of the unique things in Minot, he owned the city bus line, and you know, I remember him from childhood, actually. So anyhow, he was an Orphan Train kid, and he had a sister who was also an Orphan Train kid. They were raised in the Botno area, but he settled in Minot. You know, so one of our governors, Andrew Burke, was also an Orphan Train kid, and he came through Iowa. But I'm understanding that there also were orphan trains that went through Canada, so farther north, and 250,000 children were placed between 1854 and 1929.
Wow, and not all of the stories were happy.
No, they were not.
So unfortunately, in life as in anything, not every
Yeah.
story ends happily, but it sounds like quite a few of them probably did, and they were able to be successful, which is great.
Right, exactly. There were some, you know, and our show kind of depicts both sides. So,
Yep, so an important part of our history. And it is 8 different scenes. So
Right.
what are some of the challenges having 8 different scenes and basically a different cast for every scene?
well, it's a challenge to put them together, but it's easier to actually stage the show because you do it with 2 and 3 people, you know, in each case, you know. So you're not running one big long plot, but you're running 8 different. So, and it has a prologue and an epilogue to go with it. So, you know, it's easier on the actors to do this kind of a show, and it's actually easier on the director too. So,
All right, well that's good to know. Anything else you'd like to add about this show?
no, I think it's a must-see. You know, especially if you have kids who are in the 4th, 5th grade and up, because they're studying North Dakota history at this point. And so it is something that is not in the history books per se. The Orphan Train was the forerunner of the foster system that's in place now. So, you know, I think it's just and it's a family show.
Right.
So,
Right, so a great opportunity to be entertained and also maybe learn a little bit.
yes,
All right.
exactly. Got to be sneaky about that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. I am going to go in search of our costumer. I think she's probably backstage at this point. So we can talk a little bit about what it is like to costume a show that has close to 40 actors in it. It's definitely not an easy thing to do. And we'll get a little bit of insight on what goes into making a historical period drama work. So I have found our costumer hanging out backstage. So this is directly behind the stage. We have a permanent wall, and then we have this kind of corridor for our actors to be able to go from stage right to stage left and back again and get into our green room. And right now it looks like our costumer is setting up one of our racks. Because we have so many people, we've had to really think about how we're going to put them backstage. So we're moving our orphans' costumes into the direct backstage area, into this corridor, so that they have more space in the green room. So this is our costumer, Lynn. So what is it like to costume a show like the Orphan Train?
Well, it's pretty difficult because we have upwards to 40 people to costume. Fortunately, most of the characters only have one costume. It's very good because trying to have more than that would be very, very hard to do. We have lots of stuff downstairs, but it's not always appropriate for the actual period part. Fortunately, this particular period takes place Midwest, where fashion was a little stagnant for a while, so the prairie idea, prairie costume, is pretty constant during that time period. So we're able to put most of our people in a turn-of-the-century feel with a lot of the prairie image as well.
All right. Let's actually walk into the green room because most of the costumes are in there right now.
Yep.
And as we go, I'm going to just show you this. We've organized the kids' kind of shoes and accessories back here. So oftentimes they just kind of hang out with the costumes on the racks. But because we have so many costumes and so many people, we don't have the rack space to be able to put them on. As you can see, there's a lot of the accessories still in here because in the turn of the century, the 1910s, when this show takes place, you would wear a hat and you would have special boots and you would have shawls and all sorts of different things that you would carry and wear that we're not used to wearing anymore.
Yes.
All right. So we'll get some of these costumes in the background. Could you give us like an example of what you mean by a prairie style costume versus a turn of the century costume?
Okay. When you're dealing prairie, it's kind of like a frontier type costume. There was a lot of
Hold on. There we go. All right. Sorry, we had a bit of a drop there, so I'm just going to have her start her description of our costume again.
Okay, a prairie costume would be also thought of as a frontier style. Cotton was the most common, or wool. And then you would have long skirts, mostly high necks, long sleeves, or at least 3/4. When you worked, you would wear aprons around it to keep the basic dress clean, because an apron would be much easier to bleach or whatever and replace than the actual dress. So that would be a prairie type style.
All right. And oftentimes, people didn't have like closets full of clothes, correct?
In many cases, a person would be lucky to have one working dress or working outfit and one go to church on Sunday outfit, and they'd be lucky if they had that. Skirts, they might have 1 or 2 overskirts, several underpinnings. Men might have 2 to 3 pair of pants possibly, but shirts, they would have had one really good shirt, and then they would change collars, oddly enough. Let me find a shirt. Most men's shirts of the time would have not had a full collar. It would have had the placket piece around the neck. But then if they were getting dressed up and going to town, they would have a separate starched cotton collar, just the collar itself, which would attach at the back of the neck and then come around and would fit across the button in the front, and then that would dress up their regular shirt for Sunday go to meeting, so to speak. And,
All right.
now, when you're going into turn of the century type of thing, many people think of it as like a Gibson girl style. And this one has the Gibson girl effect with the very fluffed out, puffy sleeve. Then the body would be fitted, again very high neck. And then a very simple skirt would be worn with it. In this case, it's a very long blue one. And that became very popular in the turn of the century because off-the-rack clothing started to become popular right around the turn of the century. And to make it easiest for multiple sizes, it was done in the two-piece idea of a blouse and a skirt. And then you might wear a jacket over it. Here. And you might have a fitted jacket that would go over the skirt and the blouse effect, like that.
All right. So close to 40 people in this cast.
Yes.
What is the hardest thing to accomplish when you are costuming 40 people?
Finding the appropriate number of shoes that fit people, because shoes, if you're doing a costume, especially a period piece, and you hold on a minute, and you're trying to make it look right, you can't have people wearing Nike sneakers. It really destroys the image. And these days, very few people wear anything other than sneakers or sandals or slippers. And so finding something that kind of looks appropriate, but still fits today's foot, very, very difficult.
Sizing was very different back then, so
Yes.
they were smaller, and they also wore a lot of underpinnings that we don't continue to wear, like corsets and girdles that held everything in and made them smaller even than they were. We don't do that anymore, so it's pretty difficult to be able to find costumes that fit.
A basic boot, kind of like this, would have been a unisex shoe. Men and women, boys and girls, would have worn something like this. This is very, very, very typical.
All right, and the show was done 11 years ago, and you were involved in this show.
Yes.
You were an actor and you were the costumer, correct?
Yes, it was.
So how much of the costumes are you trying to kind of mirror the imagery of what we had last time?
Well, there are several of them that are actually the same costumes. This costume was used for the very same character that is going to be used for it this year. Let's see. This blouse was used. There's a floral one over here
Come around and take a
that
look at it.
is being reused again. Same thing. Some of the men's costumes will be. I'm pulling the same jacket and hat for one of the orphans named Lucky. The costumes for the newsboys, or news kids, over here, virtually all of these pieces were actually worn by the kids that played the newsies in the original.
But of course, not all of the same people are back for the roles, and the kids who were cast as orphans aren't necessarily the same size, and so you had to be a little bit more creative with some of them, right?
Well, the boy who wore this back in as the newsie is now wearing this as one of
Crouching
the
Ninjas.
adult characters.
All right, and that's because he grew up more than anything. But for example, we've got this beautiful purple dress, or maybe this floral one that's being worn by one of the orphans. This isn't the same outfit that was worn 11 years ago. So you're not going to see an exact replica of the show from 11 years ago, but if you saw the show back in 2007, they're going to see some things that they recognize.
Oh, definitely.
All right. And back in 2007, you played the activist role, and we talked to Courtney earlier about the role, this activist role. But this year you chose to let somebody else take it on. And
Well, the difference is back then we had about 22 people that I was costuming. This time it's almost 40.
right, so it's a whole lot more work.
Yes.
But how does it feel to have your daughter take over a role that you had?
Oh, totally competent. I don't have a problem. I think it's kind of an interesting follow-on going from the past to the future. It's an interesting tie-in there that she's taking on the role that I did back then.
All right. Anything else that you'd like to add about the show or being involved in the production in any way?
Aside from the fact that people have a tendency to think costuming is a matter of going down into a wardrobe and looking through and going, yes, well, this is the 15th of size 10 that I need for this. Sizing is virtually impossible because 99% of what we have is donated. And if it is period, if it's something that is from the past, not way past, but say like from the 60s or the 50s, even the sizing you can't trust, because what was considered a size 14 in the 50s is now about a 9. So if a person says, well, I wear a size 14 and I go and grab a dress that says it's a size 14, I can't guarantee it's going to fit. So it's a lot of guessing. It's a lot of creativity. You have to be willing to see things that don't really, they're not cut and dry. You look at something, you go, oh, I can make that look like this. And so you take it, you alter it, you embellish it, you add a hat, add some shoes, put on an apron, give it a shawl. You got yourself a new costume.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you get back to work. Like I said, she's moving all of these kids' costumes out into the hallway so that we have space for them all to be. Because this room is actually where we're going to be keeping a lot of the actors to be able to have space backstage for everyone to wait for their scenes. All right. I am heading back out into the theater. We've got some music going, so I'm going to be a little quiet, but maybe give you a chance to see what it's like backstage at Master of Players. So this is the area that the actors walk up and down while a show is going on. Oftentimes, our people in the audience don't get a chance to see this area. And now we're coming out into what you will recognize as our concession stand. And we've got Ken up in the light booth working on our sound system. Say hello, Ken. Hello. All right. He's also in our production of the Orphan Train. And is pretty excited to be back at it again. So we're going to head out into the lobby again. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this kind of behind the scenes tour and look at what it takes to put on a production like the Orphan Train. We hope to see as many of you in the theater as possible for this production. It was very well received 11 years ago, and it'll most likely be very well received again this year. Again, our dates are March 9th through 11th and 16th through 18th. Thursday, Friday performances are 7:30 and Sunday matinees at 2. We do have variable pricing, so adults are $15 and we go down from there for senior students, military, and children. Reservations aren't required but are highly recommended, and you can make those at mouseoverplayers.com or .org. Well, thank you again for tuning in this morning, and I hope to see you at the theater.